All right, so officially, warmly, welcome to Workshop 3, where you've just, I hope, completed exploring resources. Let me turn off this. So in the last workshop, somehow we got onto polarities, and I sent you a document which did a mapping between the saboteurs and the Harrison polarities. And we talked about, and I briefly, I think, demonstrated in the last workshop how you can do polarity mapping. So there was that I left you with after the last workshop. And then there was the phase exploring resources. So I'm keen to find out how you've been getting on and whether you've got any questions. So basically today we look back to see the previous phase of the program which you should have maybe completed. And then we look briefly forward to the next phase and what's in store for you in the next phase. Shall we start with looking back? I think it's this one. Yep, so it's a self-guided. So just as a recap, we'll go through it because I think, Siobhan, you actually completed it a while ago and have just had a quick look at it. So let's just go back through it in case it's now a slightly distant memory for you. So we introduced again the canvas, and there is the kind of sea captain version of the canvas if you find easier. But when I originally created this, we were still working off the old canvas. We looked at sources of energy, creativity, and inspiration, which was not so core, but I think Hannah was very keen to include it, so we included it. And then we moved into what was, for me, the core of the learning adventure, which was the fourfold connection. Any particular comments on the first part? Maybe if I move to there's another view. So I was looking at looking through the editing mode. So let's move into looking at it as a participant. Any questions, reflections on the first part, the sources of energy? No. Okay.
I felt it was particularly fitting this week, or the week that I did it, which was this week, because we had some, even at my co-working space, we had some questions around energy and the limited resources that we have sometimes. And we had one of our group who was having a particularly hard time. And I found it quite beautiful to offer, and this was something done by the host of the co-working space, to offer to send the person energy, to actually create a circle, which we do in the morning anyway, and we talk about our energy level. And he talked about how on a scale of 1 to 10, he was at a 2. Like this was just so hard what he had to deal with and the struggles he was feeling. And the host offered to asked him if he would be open to, because there were some different energy levels in the room, if he would be open to receiving some of our energy, if we could send him some energy. And I thought that was a beautiful example of the collective coming together and balancing out something that was out of balance. So that I just wanted to bring that
Yeah.
was quite astonishing to witness and to experience.
Yeah, lovely. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, and so then the actual learning adventure was mostly focused on this fourfold connection, which was one of the kind of core elements in Bernard's New Good Life package. So we took quite a bit of time here in terms of exploring it in a bit more detail. So connecting to self, others, nature, and something greater through body, mind, heart, and soul. So we systematically worked through that, looking at different ways of doing it. And it's quite interesting, as I still have this in my mind, as there's a dog sitting behind me at the moment. And when I arrive in the kitchen in the morning, I do a little bit of connecting with the dog because it loves having its tummy rubbed. So we sort of have a bit of a morning connection with the dog. And I've been doing a little bit of qigong recently, which I found also helpful. So, but I think there are many ways in which you can find to connect, but to your body, mind, etc. How did this land with you?
Well, it's like what Silla said just before we officially began about we hope that in the future medicine will take into account our whole self and stop compensating one piece for another.
Mm. Yeah. Yes. No, so they are indeed all kind of all connected. So if there's imbalance in one, it can affect others. Any particular approaches you use to connect either with yourself, others, nature, or the greater? Any tips for the others? So anything you would recommend? As I say, I've been experimenting a little bit more with Tai Chi and Qigong. I do a little mindfulness practice. There's a Dr. Dan Siegel has a what I find a very helpful meditation or mindfulness technique, which is all free, the Wheel of Awareness. So, I mean, I've been experimenting with mindfulness since I was 17, um, on and off, sometimes struggling, sometimes less so. Anything that stands out for you? What works for you?
For me, the working forest bathing, which I do for myself as well, and I facilitate as well, and that's amazing that when you basically slow down in nature, you are not running through a forest or just have a goal like I have to do this pathway and this excursion, but you are basically paying attention the real details. You can connect really much better with everything which is around us. So, and basically you can do it everywhere, also in a city. If you find a plant or you find a tree which is interesting or it's paying attention, you pay attention, then you just connect and look at an animal who is like going up or just watch a leaf. It's really amazing how you can connect with nature actually everywhere. So this is what I'm doing, and which is helping for me as well.
Yeah,
I saw also by my kids. I have an 8-year-old daughter and twin boys who will turn now 5. And I saw them basically that they are calm in nature, and we are coming back to the city or to the normal civilization. It's like their head is like exploding, and they have a different kind of behavior. They are more agitated and do such things which they never did in the forest, for example. So I think that our brain is connected, only somehow we are cutting this connection somehow, and we just have to go back.
yeah, absolutely. Another benefit of a dog, I get
Yeah,
to
exactly.
go out into the woods. I'm very lucky where I live in Belgium, because 10 minutes I'm into quite a large forest. So to get into the forest every
Yeah.
morning is fantastic.
Yeah, we moved also because we are living in Italy, and Italy is all over beton. There are in the mountains like a lot of nature, but the cities are all like there isn't even a tree sometimes and in the city. And we moved also on the periphery of the city because there is a little forest in 5 minutes by walk, and it's really we are really happy here. To be nature somehow. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Julia, Siobhan?
I'm happy to share that. Yes, I also practice Qigong. My husband teaches this. He's done this since he was a really young man, and he's a TCM practitioner. So we have a lot of the holistic approaches that are being practiced in the family. But an interesting turn, and that's connecting to younger self in a way, is that I've taken up golf again. And the practice of being outside, being in nature. Yes, you have your clubs with you, but also something that's connecting me with my kids, because my kids have recently taken it on. My son's changed schools, so he has the opportunity to play golf as an extracurriculum activity, and he's really enjoying it. And I plan on doing more of it as a family and to be out in nature.
Mm. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Okay, so we went through the various aspects: connecting with self, connecting with others. Stop me if I go too fast, or is there anything you want to add? I included some additional practices from Jennifer Garvey Berger, which I think she's fantastic. So I included a couple of optional exercises if you get a chance to look at those. As I say, it's a balance between trying not to overdo it. So I have this sort of natural tendency to include too much. So this is something you could come back to if it suits you. Connecting with nature, we've talked a little bit about, and connecting with something greater. And then we had interconnecting, which I think was optional. And then we talked a little bit about how the fourfold connection can help build resilience or anti-fragility. Are you familiar with the difference between resilience and anti-fragility? So I think resilience is more about being able to bounce back. Anti-fragility is more about bouncing forward. So for example, if you break your leg, it's sometimes said, I don't know if it's true, but that your leg is actually stronger after it's broken. So you come back stronger than where you were before. So resilience is you bounce back to where you were. Anti-fragility is where you can, at least in terms of what was talked about by Taleb in his book, where you can actually come back stronger. So something that knocks you back, you come back and you're actually stronger than where you were to start with. So we looked at how these practices can build resilience and or anti-fragility, and then looking at how coming back again to the new good life elements and how they can be used as resources. So there were some suggestions that, and there was the download, the PDF version you could download, and then that was more or less it. So actually, I think relatively straightforward learning adventure. I don't think it was too complex in that.
I thought the anti-fragility was similar to post-traumatic growth.
Yes. So say a little bit more for people who may be watching the video.
Well, the post-traumatic growth was Tajiki and Calhoun. And yeah, basically, I mean, I think, well, my understanding is that there are people who suffer major trauma. But personally, I believe that everyone experiences trauma in their lives, minor or major. And then when you go through that and you work through it, yeah, you come out better on the other side, stronger, as you said, like the anti-fragility, greater personal strength, stronger spirituality maybe, and greater appreciation for life.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so if there are no questions or further comments on that, oh yeah, Julia. Sorry, Julia.
Yeah, so on the elements, when I downloaded the PDF, I was actually thinking of, in addition to having an online setting like this, whether you have any experience of working with these concepts in real life, and whether there was any experience around using the elements physically, as in experiencing them firsthand in a group setting.
Well, personally, I don't, because but the work I used to do was working mostly within European institutions doing management training, and this wasn't something that we explored. But in fact, I mean, probably there's a question that'd be interesting to ask Bernard, because I mean, I believe Bernard's the elements were his idea, and I think he's had much more experience in using them in real life contexts. So this is kind of relatively new to me in terms of bringing them into learning programs. But I mean, the elements themselves, so for example, just starting with soil, you know, the grounding yourself, being, like we've talked about, being grounded in nature. And so, or Qigong, so it, you know, and like that, or breath, breathing techniques, or mindfulness techniques. This is kind of how I would imagine those showing up in practice. Do any of you have any more thoughts? Siobhan, Zilla? We'll certainly have a conversation with Bernard and see what's his reaction.
Yeah, thank you. I might reach out to him anyway, because he's doing some courses I saw not even 3 hours away from where I live, so it might be a very real possibility that.
Really? Which course is this? Is this his master and assistant practitioner, or is it something else?
There are different modules that he does. It's near Regensburg. I used to study there, and it's not that far from me, so I was looking into that.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Okay, well, I'll certainly have a conversation with him about it and see what he comes up with, and I'll put something in an email or a
Yeah,
chat.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so if we have finished Learning Adventure 3, just to let you know what's coming up. So we come back to, in this version of the Mind Your Good Life Plus, what we're doing is we're basically following the phases that were in the Mind Your Good Life program. Now, what we're thinking of doing in the future is perhaps starting with the Mind Your Good Life Light program for coaches. So you know that we're piloting in a couple of weeks the first version of the Mind Your Good Life Light, and we're thinking of making that the kind of foundation program for everybody, for two reasons, really. One is because many people found the Mind Your Good Life program a bit too much. And in that program, we tried to address the personal, me as a person and me as a coach. And so what we're thinking of doing is trying to reduce the workload by focusing just on me as a person in the first step, but also covering the whole canvas. So the new program addresses the whole canvas, which the original version of Mind Your Good Life didn't. I think possibly because it wasn't so clear when we developed it in Bernard's mind. So things have evolved over the past couple of years. And so one of the things we're now doing is looking at using the Mind Your Good Life Light as a starter, and then adapting the Mind Your Good Life Plus to kind of follow the new format. But this program follows the original version. So phase 4 was Face the Threats. And so in phase 4, it was quite a tough phase for many people, facing all the things that are going on in the world. I think over the past couple of years, things have got even more chaotic. I mean, Trump has helped bring home to people, I think, some of the challenges that we were kind of anxious about 2 years ago, but it's sort of many of them are coming to fruition more quickly under Trump's leadership. So in the Mind Your Good Life program, we did go and look at the global shadows in quite some detail. What we try to do in this is to look at, okay, how can I support people manage in the face of the global threat? So we don't really go much more into the global threats themselves. This focus is much more on, okay, how can I come to live in a much more sort of accepting, peaceful relationship with what's going on in the world. Okay, so what we do is we look at what Bernard calls active accepting hope. So you've probably heard of active hope. So there was the program that we ran last autumn, which was Active Hope, which is a fantastic program. And there's a free program online, which is terrific if you've never done it. Bernard takes this a little bit further. He wants to introduce something called accepting. So he thinks we have to not only be in active hope, but we have to also have a certain amount of acceptance of the way things are. So this is a slight twist on the active hope. So acceptance enables coaches to stay with reality rather than numbing out or denying it, recognizing losses without collapsing into despair, and taking meaningful action without demanding guarantees. So as I say, there's a bit of a twist on active hope. And so we look at the implications for coaching. We introduce the 3 shadow levels, personal, local, and global. So the global shadows can show up personally, locally, and globally. So we explore those a little bit more. I might remove some of this because I've heard from others who've been through the program that sometimes it's a bit too much. So I'm going to perhaps update it before I release it to you. And then Bernard introduces the phases of grief from Kubler-Ross: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And explore that in a little bit more depth, and then responding to the global threats. So he's talking about not letting go, holding the ambiguity. So there is a tendency that I kind of noticed in myself of times when I think, oh, it's too late, we're kind of all doomed, and then I think, well, no, there's still hope, and swinging around, and then sometimes I sort of forget the whole thing and just concentrate on my life and forget everything. So I kind of notice myself moving around in relation to what's going on in the world, a bit less over Trump's recent term because it's so much in your face. And then he looks at the 4 ingredients of active hope, and how you can transform denial, anger, bargaining, and depression into grounded attention, some kind of protective energy, meaningful action, and deep attachment. So this is what the next learning adventure is about. It's about how we can live with more peace and acceptance with what's going on around, and how we can support our clients do the same. Okay, so that's what's coming up in the next learning journey. I think it pretty much focuses on active accepting hope. And so, again, if you have any questions, if you go through it, I think it's relatively straightforward. Again, there's quite a lot in it. And then we move into we tackle 2 of the elements on the canvas, the museum and the basement. So we go into those 2 elements of the canvas in a little bit more detail. So this is what's coming up for you in the next learning adventure. Any questions now? I mean, obviously you'll have to go into the detail. Any initial reactions, comments, thoughts? I think it's useful. I mean, it's one of the it's an important aspect of what Bernard is up to. How we can, avoid the ups and downs and live in active hope, but a certain amount of accepting hope. So kind of accepting that things are the way they are, and not allowing anything that's going on in the world to mess too much with our lives and stop us getting on with what we need to get on with. Okay? Yeah. Julia?
Yeah, I was just reflecting on how much I struggled with that going through the last program. This was the hardest one for me.
Yes.
And engaging with it again, I saw it, and that there was some interesting dynamic going on. So I think it'd be interesting to see now, having gone through it and I made myself go through it last time, eventually, like close to the to the date where we were supposed to meet again. But it'd be interesting to see how this also connects with what we've done last week, this anti-fragility. So, can I cope with it better this time around, going through it again, sort of. So this would be quite an interesting experience.
Well, that's the reason why they're in the order they are. So we're hoping that the last one, the exploring resources, gave you the resources to cope better with the facing the threats. So I hope it does. But your nose is not so much put into the challenges so much as approaches for managing what may be going on. So we don't really go into the threats in any more detail. You might be pleased to know this is really focused on how can I live more comfortably in relation to what's going on. So hopefully that will help too.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Scylla?
Me, a book came in my mind, which was written by Edith Eva Eger, who was a survivor from the concentration camps in the Second World War. She
Yeah.
was a child basically, and she wrote a book which was The Choice. And basically, she's going through the whole situation of how she survived and how she was accepting what's going on in her life and didn't enter to the victim phase, basically. So she passed away this week.
Oh,
But she was 90 something, so she basically said that it's a miracle that, and she was a psychologist and lived in America, and she had quite a beautiful life after that. But it's also because she gained a lot through the whole acceptance and hope during her phase in the camp. So
yes.
I send you the link. Maybe you can also take a look. It's really a fascinating and beautiful book.
Lovely, thank you. I mean, it made me think of Buddha. Now, apparently, the Buddha is alleged to have said, everybody is faced with two arrows. The first arrow is you get pain in your life,
Yeah.
but most of the suffering is caused not by the first arrow, but all the resistance to what is. And I'm constantly catching myself causing myself suffering by resisting what is. And so something quite alive for me at the moment, trying to catch myself more quickly suffering as a result of something that I have no control over. And so the pain is inevitable, but suffering is somehow optional.
Yeah.
And so it's something.
So true.
So this next learning adventure is all about that. It's about pain is inevitable, suffering is more optional, but not necessarily easy. It's something I'm constantly having to work at and catch myself causing myself more suffering than really makes any sense at all. So it's an ongoing project for me.
Yeah. There is another book which I recently read. It's an Italian writer, Stella. Wait, because I forgot her name. Saladino, and she wrote a book about think how the plants are thinking. and she's going into this detail that basically we have lacks. So we are really made to run away from all the things which is happening with us. And the plants, they cannot run away. So wherever it's happening with them, they have to stay there and suffer and somehow developing a strategy to survive, basically. And then she's going into details because of the plants that like cactus and some such kind of things, that what's happening with them. But the fact is that we have legs and we can run away. It's really not easy for us to stay in our suffering and in our pain and solve it in a different way. We used to run away, and that's not the best idea for our development.
Fantastic. Well, lovely. Is there anything else? So it's a great place to end on. Anything else before we close the session?